One of the most talked about teams in college football has been the Oklahoma Sooners because of their transition to the SEC. This is a team that everyone seems to have an opinion on. There are some that are concerned about their transition and how they'll handle it, and there are some that are optimistic. We take a deep dive into the Oklahoma Sooners and see what we should expect from them, and then look at how we think they'll do in the SEC this year. Before we do that, though, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video, share the video. It goes a long way in helping the channel as well as helping this deep dive series grow. It's been a really fun series to do. Helps me educate myself on the college football season as well. Get to hear from you and what you all think of each team. But before we go too much further into that, let's dive into Oklahoma and see what we should expect from them in 2024. Brent Venables, when he took over the Oklahoma job, I think he knew the challenges that were ahead of him. I think that he knows what the expectations are and what people are saying. And all he has done is continue to recruit at a high level as well as elevate certain positions and certain groups. The offense has done a great job of continuing its success. And I think that his impact on the defense is obvious as well. You obviously see what he's capable of doing. His coaching staff, I think, is a good group as well. And you see what this team is capable of when you look at the surface level. When you look at what they're capable of doing, the coaching staff is a good group. I think that it's a big reason why they went 10-3 last year, and a big reason why they should see success in the SEC this year. They also did a good job of bringing people in from the transfer portal. They did a great job of replacing certain talent. And even when you lost certain players, you found ways to replace them. And there are a number of explosive weapons that we'll talk about today. The bigger addition to me, obviously, people are going to talk about Deion Burks, and he's going to have a massive impact on this offense. But I think the bigger impact to me was getting Dominic Williams from TCU. First, Dominic Williams going into the transfer portal was surprising, but the fact that Oklahoma went and swooped him up says a lot about what this team needs, but also what we should expect from that unit. And we'll dive into them a little bit deeper later in the video, but Dominic Williams was a huge addition. Branson Hickman, underrated addition from SMU. I think that he is going to step in right away and compete, and he'll be someone who exceeds expectations even for Oklahoma fans. Then you look at a few other ones that kind of fly under the radar. Jake Roberts isn't someone that everyone saw coming or knew and probably still don't know, but he is someone that could have a big factor or a big impact on this offense. Casey Thompson obviously is not going to be the starter, but I think that's a decent backup addition there. Des Malone's an underrated player at corner, as is Spencer Brown at the offensive tackle positions. You don't lose a ton of players where you feel bad that they're gone. I think that losing Tawi Walker at running back hurt, but not enough to really worry about that position. Feel like they're fine there. The safety position, losing Key Lawrence, that hurts, but I think that they're fine. Savion Bird at tackle. You lost some players, and also getting Green at tackle. You lost some players that obviously that probably hurts. You'd obviously love to have them still on the roster, but when it comes down to it, I don't think you have too many concerns. The staff did a good job of bringing in talent at certain positions to fill certain needs. And that's really all you have to say about that because they did such a good job. They're doing a great job of recruiting. We already talked about that. They did a great job in the transfer portal as well. So let's dive into the offense. The offense obviously hinges on Jackson Darnold's development, and we'll see what happens when he finally gets a chance to play full time. And now that he is the guy, it is his offense. We'll see what happens because when you watch the bowl game, you saw both sides of him. You saw the guy who struggled at times, but you also saw a player who is capable of having a big time impact on his team. He is someone who I think this coaching staff is really high on. They still expect big things from him. And at the same time, you also know you have certain things to work out, but that's fine. There's not like a concern about what his future looks like because you know that it was going to take a little bit of time to get him acclimated and ready for this season. But you obviously want to see him take that step. You need to see him take a step forward, and you need to have him identify his playmakers early and often because this Oklahoma offense has options. There's really no other way to put it. And if you're not able to move the ball down the field, it's because your quarterback's not finding the guys downfield. The running back position is interesting though, because like we've mentioned before, you lose Walker, but Gavin Sawchuk is back. I think a lot of people expected him to take over a prominent role in the rushing attack when he arrived on campus. Last year, a solid year, 744 yards and 9 touchdowns. Javante Barnes is back after a 140-yard season. You'd like to see his production increase. And then after that, Sam Franklin, a UTM transfer, could be a factor. Had over 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns last year with UT Martin. So someone that could be a factor if a guy like Barnes isn't getting the job done, or if Sawchuk needs a breather, whatever. You're going to have options. So the rushing attack really was the not as frequently used portion of the offense last year. It was still a solid group, and it should be a solid group once again. I think Seth Luttrell is going to try to run the ball, have the rushing attack be a little bit more of a focal point. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Behind Arnold, like we mentioned before, Casey Thompson, the former Nebraska and FAU transfer, not a high level addition, but definitely a you bring the ceiling up a little bit because of his experience, because of what he has seen so far this year, or excuse me, in his career. The passing attack should not take a step back. In fact, this could be one of the best passing attacks in college football. It doesn't matter that they're going in the SEC. This group is absolutely nuts. Deion Burks obviously got a ton of attention because of his abilities. Purdue, 629 yards and 7 touchdowns. If he can stay healthy, he'll be really fun. If he can stay out of trouble off the field, he'll be really fun. I think that Nick Anderson is an absolute star. You look at what he is capable of doing, 798 yards, average 21 yards per catch and 10 touchdowns. I just think that he is so good at what he does. 6'4", 213 pounds. He is going to be a focal point. He and Burks could be two of the better players on this team and two of the best receivers in college football. And I think Andrew Anthony, people kind of forget that he had 429 yards in just a handful of games before he got hurt. I think that people just forget that a little bit, that how explosive he was. We were talking about Andrew Anthony in a big way. We were talking about him and his ability to be explosive, and we saw that at Michigan and we saw that at Oklahoma before he got hurt. Hopefully he's back to 100%, but if he is, he's another player to keep an eye on. So not only do you have to worry about Burks and Anderson, but now you have Andrew Anthony back and maybe fully healthy. That's terrifying if you're an opposing defense. Then you have guys like Jalil Farouk, someone who's definitely going to be a part of the rotation, someone who probably doesn't get as much love as some of these other guys, but he is definitely going to be just as much of a factor as the rest of them. He is someone who had 694 yards and 2 touchdowns last year, and someone who stepped up when Anthony went down. So that's definitely a nice piece to have, especially if you need someone to step up. If you need a player to take on a more prominent role, he has already proven that he can do that. And the wide receiver position is better because they have him on the team. Behind him, though, there's plenty of depth too. That this passing attack should not be worried whatsoever. They should not have any concerns with guys like Jaden Gibson and Jaquays Petaway. You have plenty of options. Even if you lose one or two players to injury, you have good depth. The tight end position, not as deep as some of these other positions, but Jake Roberts is a solid player, could have a better year production wise than what we've seen in the past. Bauer Sharp comes in from Southeast Louisiana. He'll be an interesting player as well. You don't have as much experience as the tight end position, but again, the wide receivers are probably going to be the more of the focal point of the offense than anyone else. So you're in good hands there. It's offensive line, despite the fact that they're bringing in multiple new faces. I really like what this staff has done with this group. And I think that bringing in some of these players means that you maybe don't have the talent that you want at that position, or I should say the experience, not the talent. There's plenty of talented players, but maybe you don't have that experience. So we will see. This is kind of a hodgepodge group. So you have 4 new faces that are coming to the program. Michael Tarquin, Branson Hickman, Babeshi Nuwayu, and Spencer Brown. You have 4 new starters, meaning that you're going to have some communication challenges early on. Finding ways to build chemistry with these guys is going to be the biggest challenge. But you have the talent. All of those guys are talented enough to come to Oklahoma. Three of them are coming from the group of five level. So clearly that, excuse me, two of them from the group of five level, Spencer Brown coming from Michigan State and Tarquin coming from USC. So two two Power Five guys and two Group of Five guys. So you have guys that are coming from various different levels to join Jacob Sexton at the guard position. So you have plenty of challenges early on, but again, you have plenty of talent as well. The tackle position is interesting because Tarquin will probably be the backup, the next guy at right tackle if they need to move him to right tackle because Brown is out of the game for whatever reason. Redshirt sophomore Jake Taylor is someone who this staff I think really likes, and he'll get a chance to show what he can do. Troy Everett's a solid backup at the center position. He'll push Hickman for that starting spot. So you have guys that have experience, and this offensive line plays a huge role in what this team can do because this is an explosive offense, but you don't have an explosive offense without a good offensive line. So this is a group that definitely is ready to prove their worth and ready to prove that they can be just as much a factor as everyone else. The defense is the group that obviously needs to take a step forward, and all of that starts up front. This is a defensive line that I think could be one of the best in the SEC and in college football. If you're playing at a high level and they're playing to their potential, this could be a group that it means business and is serious trouble for the rest of the SEC. Ethan Downs, I don't think is someone who has gotten enough recognition for what he can do. I think he has a bright future, a future that should include him playing on Sundays. And he just needs to find a way to be even more disruptive than he already is. 29 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks last year. He's been a proven playmaker for Oklahoma, and he is back for another year. Dejon Terry is another player on the interior that is exactly that 6'3, 321 pounds, 4 tackles for loss last year, someone who is going to be tough to block. And he's joined by Dominic Williams. We talked about him earlier. Dominic Williams at his peak is a monster. He is an explosive player who's extremely disruptive. 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks last year, 6'2, 320 pounds. So there's plenty of size up the middle for this Oklahoma defensive line. And behind them, they're in good hands too. David Stone is a freshman who's expected to compete right off the bat. He has good size. You have Grayson Helton, who's a productive player from last year. He will be in the rotation as well. So you have good depth at the tackle position. And then it's just a matter of who on the edge is going to step up. R. Mason Thomas is someone whose staff really likes. They expect big things from him. He is expected to play a much bigger role than he did last year, and he has plenty of potential. He's a young player who is ready to step up in a big way, and the staff expects big things from him in 2024. Trace Ford is back. That was a nice get in terms of not losing players. Trace Ford is back. He'll be part of that rotation as well. And then getting Caden Woolard from Miami of Ohio, that was another solid addition in the transfer portal. So this defensive line has not only the talent, but has the depth to compete at a tougher level of competition. That will be huge for the rest of the defense. If you can find ways to one, get after the quarterback, but two, also be disruptive in both aspects of the game, the passing game and the running game, you are going to be in good hands. You feel like you're in a great spot. And it also helps the linebackers who are extremely talented behind you. So if you're not getting the job done up front, Oklahoma has the luxury of having the amount of talented players they have behind them. Danny Stutzman surprised a lot of people by returning in 2024, and he is ready for a big year once again. 104 tackles last year, 16 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, absolute star for this team, and he is back to do it once again. It'll be fun to see what he's capable of doing, and it'll be fun to see what this group of linebackers can do around him. Kip Lewis is going to be a fun player to watch. I think a lot of people expected Jaron Kanek to be a starter, but Kip will play the will position, and Kanek will play behind Stutzman at the Mike position. But still, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for those guys. So keep an eye on all three of those players. Kendall Dolby plays the cheetah position, so he'll be someone to keep an eye on. Had a solid year for Oklahoma at the position last year. 49 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 passes defended, 2 interceptions. He is someone who is, I think, stepped into his role pretty well. And again, a lot of this has to do with learning this new system, learning Venables' system. And now that these guys have that under their belt, they feel pretty good about where they're going. And the depth behind these guys feels like it's a good group. It's just a matter of, again, how comfortable is everybody now that they have a full year of experience? And what does that mean for this year? What does this mean for this group that is now facing tougher competition? And same can be said for the secondary. The secondary is probably the group that has to improve the most, but you do have plenty of returning talent. So that helps a ton. That's going to be a big thing for this defense. And it's a group that finished 112th against the pass last year. So there's plenty of room for improvement. You also have to find certain players behind them to step up. And we'll start with the corners. Woody Washington and Gentry Williams are back for what feels like too many years at the cornerback position, but they are back, and that's huge. I think that's really good. And both of them have the potential to be really fun players to watch. Now you're going to face plenty of talented players in the SEC. You've probably done that in the Big 12 as well, but you're going to do that now in the SEC on a regular basis. So Gentry Williams and Woody Washington definitely have bigger challenges on their plate, but I feel like they're in good positions. They're experienced enough to know that they don't have to worry too much. They can trust their abilities and they can make things happen from there. The safety position, kind of the same thing. Billy Bowman Jr. is a star for that group. And, he had 6 interceptions last year. 3 of them were returned for touchdowns. So he is a proven playmaker that is ready to bring his group into SEC play. Robert Spears Jennings, not as talented as Bowman, but I think that he is definitely someone who will be a factor for this team. Again, a lot of teams are going to test this secondary, and it's just a matter of who's ready to step up, who's ready for that challenge. Behind them, that's where things get really interesting because you have guys like Des Malone who have experience at San Diego State. They're inheriting a new challenge. Going from the Mountain West to the SEC is a culture shock. So we'll see how Des Malone does, but I trust that he is going to handle things fairly well. And then 2 other guys to keep an eye on, Reggie Powers and Peyton Bowman. Peyton Bowman had a solid year last year as more of a backup and someone who is going to be part of the rotation once again. Powers is a freshman, so we'll see how he handles be able to play in the SEC as a freshman. Means that you are really good and you are ahead of most of your peers. So it'll be fun to watch. Keep an eye on him. I think that this is a group that has plenty of potential. It's just a matter of can you turn that potential into production? And that's where we lead us to the strengths and concerns of this team. Wide receiver is a strength, linebacker is a strength. To me, defensive line is a strength as well. Those are 3 positions that I feel really good about for Oklahoma, regardless of what conference they would be in. That is a trio of positions that you feel really good about and don't have too many concerns if you're an Oklahoma fan. Concerns for me, quarterback. I think that Jackson Arnold being the X factor for this team makes sense. He is someone that if he's playing really well, put him in the strengths category. But what happens if he goes down? What happens if he doesn't play well? They don't have a ton of high ceiling options. So that's going to be a concern. Obviously, moving to the SEC is a concern. That's yada, yada, yada. We don't need to go on that. We're going to talk about that plenty this year. And maybe Oklahoma, struggles, but maybe they exceed expectations as well. The offensive line, with so many new faces, will be concerned until they're able to prove us wrong. So that's another concern as well. But again, there's plenty of optimism to have with Oklahoma. This is a group that is still very talented, and there shouldn't be too many concerns about what this coaching staff is doing in terms of bringing in the talent that's ready to compete in the SEC. The schedule is going to be tough. And again, when you are in the SEC, it is always going to be tough. It does not matter who you are because you're going to have to play tough teams regardless. And Oklahoma is not an exception to that. So I think that some people are just concerned that Oklahoma's going into an SEC schedule, but like so is Texas, and so are all these other schools that are already in the SEC. I don't think that should be more of a concern for Oklahoma than it is anyone else. That being said, it's still going to be tough because again, it is the SEC. Now, that being said, a 3-0 start is not, I won't say mandatory, but expected. Temple, Houston, and Tulane should be a 3-0 start. After that, this is where we get to truly see where Oklahoma stands. Tennessee at Auburn and then Texas. The Texas game to me will tell us about this team, but it's not going to tell me how they're going to fare against SEC competition. Tennessee and Auburn do that a little bit more. I think that if you're able to handle business against, if you're able to beat Tennessee, which is going to be tough, and then go on the road to Auburn and win, that would be a huge boost to momentum. And then you get to the Texas game, that obviously is just going to be a coin flip. Then after that, there's some tough games for sure. South Carolina could be better. We'll see about that. Ole Miss is expected to compete for a conference championship. That game is in Oxford, so that will be tough. Maine obviously is a win. At Missouri is tough, and then following that with Alabama at home and at LSU, those are tough games. So the floor is 5-7. I think that you are able to win 4 games for sure, and the fact they'll win 4, and if they go yeah, oh man, if they win, if they're 4-0 and they finish the year 4-8, I think that that's going to be uh, I should say 4-0 in those gimme games, and then they go 0-8 for the rest of the year. That's concerning. They don't win one of those next 8 games. I think that they win at least one of those next 8 games. Probably more of looking at a 6-6, 7-5 record. 10-2 is the ceiling. If this team is truly playing at a level that Oklahoma fans think that they're capable of doing, then they're going to be a 10-2 team. I think that they can do a lot of things well and they can be explosive. So I think that you have to give some optimism as much as you give them for the pessimism side of things as well. So Brent Venables has a huge challenge. Obviously, that much is a given, but this is still a team that is really fun to watch. This is still a team that should expect big things in 2024. Yes, it's going to be challenging to play in a conference that is much tougher, but Oklahoma has the talent. Oklahoma has the ability to compete in the SEC. It's just a matter of handling that transition, adjusting to certain adversities, and finding ways to win football games when a lot of people expect you to lose them.